Take a look at this map of Saudi Arabia. Out of 37 million citizens, roughly 80% live squeezed into just two narrow geographic lines, one hugging the west coast and another cutting directly across the center. To understand how concentrated that is, you have to look at the total landmass. If you placed Saudi Arabia over Europe, it would cover nearly everything between Paris and Ukraine. Outside of those two corridors, the terrain is deeply hostile. The southern expanse is dominated by the empty quarter, a continuous ocean of sand larger than the entirety of France. This chart demonstrates the lethal wet bulb threshold along the Persian Gulf. Wet bulb temperature is a metric combining heat and humidity. When the environment here hits 95 degrees Fahrenheit at 100% humidity, the human body loses its ability to cool itself through sweating, making it lethal out in the open within hours. Based strictly on the local climate and geography, sustaining a modern society of 37 million people here is a physical impossibility. Saudi Arabia holds a highly specific geographic record. It is the largest country on Earth without a single permanent river. Because of its topography, it also receives effectively zero annual rainfall across most of its interior. So you have no surface water, no rain, and a climate capable of physically shutting down the human body. How exactly are tens of millions of people living in enormous urban centers? One of those two population lines actually makes geographic sense. The western coastal plain is bordered by high mountains that catch passing moisture from the Red Sea, creating enough rainfall to support ancient trade hubs like Mecca and Medina. That second line, running straight across the center of the country through cities like Riyadh and Dammam, is different. For thousands of years, this specific corridor was an empty, isolated wasteland. That changed in 1938 with the discovery of massive underground oil reserves right along the Persian Gulf. The government took the ensuing windfall of cash, imported millions of foreign laborers, and built massive urban centers straight into the sand. In a single human lifetime, the population went from a largely nomadic society to 85% urbanized. The Central Population Corridor exists as an engineered habitat, built and funded exclusively by the oil boom. To feed those rapidly expanding cities, the state initially tapped into deep underground fossil aquifers, ancient trapped water sources, to force crops to grow out in the desert. But because it almost never rains, those aquifers do not refill. The state pumped them out so aggressively that 4/5 of that ancient water is already gone, and the rest is expected to run completely dry by the 2030s. Facing a total loss of agricultural water, the government pivoted to brute force engineering. They built out the largest desalination network on the planet to physically manufacture fresh water from the ocean. This map traces the 467-kilometer pipeline route moving that water inland. Billions of gallons of ocean water have to be desalinated and then pumped across this scorching desert just to keep an isolated central hub like Riyadh alive. Manufactured water now provides half the kingdom's total supply, leaving the population dependent on a country-sized machine for survival. Running a life support system of this scale carries an enormous thermodynamic cost. The desalination plants, combined with the extreme air conditioning required to survive the heat, consume about 90% of the country's entire electricity production. And virtually all of that electricity is generated by burning their own domestic oil and natural gas reserves. This data visualization tracks the ratio of Saudi oil exported for profit versus what stays in the country. The government's budget relies heavily on exporting oil, but a rapidly growing percentage is burned domestically to keep the power and water running. They're cannibalizing their primary export, converting billions of dollars of wealth directly into drinking water and cooling. It creates an economic trap. Every time they expand those artificial urban centers, they have to burn more of the exact resource they need to sell. This is exactly why the kingdom is frantically building new megaprojects and pushing to integrate large-scale solar and wind power by 2030. They need alternative energy so they can actually export their oil rather than burning it for basic survival. Until that transition is complete, Saudi Arabia remains a fragile, over-engineered habitat. Its entire existence relies on a massive technological loop functioning flawlessly. If the oil revenues ever dry up before that transition is secured, 37 million people will find themselves stranded in an engineered wasteland that has actively rejected human life for millennia.